Dr. Alka Patel, thank you so much for joining the Pain and Performance podcast.
Great to be here. Hi there, Derek.
So, when people ask you, what do you do today? What is your answer to that? How do you answer that when, you're at the cocktail answer?
As in, what do I do today? As in, what do I do? Or what have I done today? What do you mean? As in,
No. Like, what do you do?
what do I do? Oh, God, it's that $6 million question, isn't it? What do I do? I empower lifelong leaders to lead a long life.
That's it. That is an incredible answer. You're going to get a lot of follow-up questions with that. So what does it look like having, I guess let's fill the listeners in before we get into that stuff on like your journey to getting to this point. What has that looked like? What twists and turns in the road have you taken to get here?
Oh, we definitely know that life is not one long straight road, right? There are so many twists and turns. But I thought when I started in my career as a medical doctor over here in the UK, I thought my path was going to be pretty straight. I remember those medical school interviews. Why do you want to be a doctor? I want to help people. And that's what I was going to do. And I was ready to do that. And I fell into the system. And the system here in the UK is what I now describe as McDonald's style medicine. So let me explain what I mean by that. What I mean by that is it's very much this sort of drive-through approach to health, which is buy one, get one free. What's the special drug offer today? How can I get you in and out as quick as possible? Because we only have 10 minutes with our patients as GPs here in the UK. And I had those penny drop moments, when you say, what were those twists and turns? There were several of those, which made me realize the healthcare system is sadly broken. And it's broken here in the UK, it's broken in the US, it's broken worldwide. And I think I had three of those when I do reflect on this. The first was the death of my father. And that was a tough time because he died on an operating table at the hands of a surgeon whose knife slipped.
Oh my gosh.
And I was too young and too naive and too at the beginning of my career to know what that meant. But now I know what that meant. But that was a moment. Then as I
Were you practicing already at that point?
Yeah, I was. I was a partner in a GP practice. So I was businesswoman, GP partner, lots of job titles and roles, huge amounts of responsibilities, two young children at the time as well. But I powered on. And then as I powered through, I hit my own brick wall in the form of a hospital admission, which resulted in my kidneys shutting down and my liver not wanting to work. And I didn't know what that was at the time, but now I know it was burnout. Right? Hit me hard. And that was a pivotal moment, because to recover from that, I had to take care of myself. And, which doctor does that? We don't do that. We take care of others. We don't take care of ourselves. So I had to figure out how to do that. And in my journey to figuring out how to do that, I realized that what I was doing wrong for my patients was taking their health away from them. Just like the surgeon took my father's health away and thought he could fix it, I was the doctor who was fixing it. And it doesn't fix people by taking health away from them. You fix people's health. You help them fix themselves by giving it back. And that's what I learned the hard way through my burnout journey.
Let's dig into that a little bit, because it's such a huge, that's why we do these things, right? It's you talk to all these doctors who are taking time out to try and share information like this. And, you hope that changes as many, or hopefully many more lives than you could change by, being in the office consistently. But when we talk about the healthcare system taking the health away from people, explain that a little bit further. Let's kind of double tap on that.
So health for me has always been something that I've seen my patients believe that they just have. We all enter this world thinking, we've just got health. I've just got it. I don't need to do anything about it. I have health. And we don't really think about it. It's at the bottom of that list. But really, health for me is a skill. And it's a skill because, and I define it as a skill for two reasons. One, because it means that you're doing something. My Tedx talk was titled, Health is a Verb, Not a Noun, for that reason, because I truly believe that health is something that you need to do. It doesn't just sit on your lap and just sit there. It needs you to be an active part of it. And the reason I call it a skill is because you can optimize it. Remember riding a bike or playing the piano or learning a language, that you get better and better and better at it. So health is a skill full stop, which means that you need to do health and you need to upskill on it to really optimize and elevate it and enhance it.
I think it's such a great way to teach people how to think about this, because if we teach it as a skill, and I've got so many thoughts on where this needs to happen, but if we start to teach people that health is a skill, then there should be a way to track that skill, right? We should be able to watch how good am I at this skill? How good am I improving? How much am I improving? What's the score, so to speak, if I'm working on my skill? And then we have the power, right? I mean, I think that kind of goes back to what you're saying is, if my health is a skill and I can improve it and I can get better, then a lot of that's fine. Then a lot of that means that I have the capability to improve my own health, and I'm not reliant on outside, forces, outside interventions, outside, doctors even being the ones that are doing it. They may guide me, but at the end of the day, it's my skill to hone and improve. One of the things we talk about is like, I feel like a lot of these thoughts get imprinted on children. And if we can start to teach kids a bunch of just simple skills about how to improve their health, their function, their mobility, their diet, all of these things, they might forget all of those things, right? But the philosophy and the principle of it will stand as they kind of start to realize they're not invincible and they get into their 30s and 40s. But so what are ways that we can do that, though? I think that's where it's always a little bit difficult. How can we teach people to improve their skill of health?
So lots is coming up there, isn't it? I love that you're raising this, because I think the first thing, and if we teach this to children from that young age, is that simple sentence: I am 100% responsible for my life. That's it. Which means I'm 100% responsible for the outcome of my health in this life. And you take that responsibility on yourself. A, it stops you handing it over. And B, it puts you in that driving seat. It means that it's something that you want to hold and take control of and are in charge of. And that you're not reliant on, as you say, those external forces. So I think that's a really fundamental thing to do, is hold your health as your own and teach each other that we take our own responsibility. You can't make me feel anything. I hold those feelings, right? I can't put that on you. So I think that's really, really fundamental. And then the other thing that you mentioned was just the age of health that we're in right now. Let's talk about right now. This time that we're living in is an incredible time, because I truly believe that the future of health lies in tech and data. It lies in what we're able to access right now. I believe that the new currency of health is data. And that's exciting, right? That's making me smile, because it's making health fun. I think that's what we need to fundamentally do as well, is it's make health fun, a skill that you want to have fun at upskilling in.
Yeah, it's so stressful for people sometimes to think about health and to think about like all the things I have to do. If I listen to these, health hackers, I'm supposed to wake up, I'm supposed to do a cold shower, I'm supposed to go meditate for an hour, I need to do a fasted exercise. Like, there's a stress to it, and you're like, it doesn't have to be that way. What do you enjoy? What can you make fun? The one thing I love about the data stuff, and me and you were talking before we started recording, was like Oura rings, is how do we gamify some of this stuff so that we can treat all of our health skill as a game, and the interventions that we, the interventions that we use on ourselves as these little experiments, and like, what did it do? What did it change? What am I doing that caused it to change? And now, like, even if we get a bad blood test or we have a bad sleep score one night, now it's kind of fun. We get to play detective even. Like, okay, what did I do? Oh, I had that third glass of wine before we went to sleep. So that's where that came from. And having that metric that we get to kind of play the game of health, if we're tracking it, which all the wearables and testing and the data that we're starting to have access to can help. And then the follow up to that will also be like, the more people doing this, the hard thing about health is there's so much intertwined, right? There's all these things. So when we try and study it, it's a really difficult thing to tweeze out the exact interventions that made the change. But if we get thousands of people collecting data, now we have an even more powerful resource to tell people, hey, here's the things that actually are changing: diet, sleep, energy, stress, depression, anxiety. You know, when you're coaching people through that, are there steps that you're teaching them to get to that point?
Yeah, I think a couple of things there as well is I love the sort of idea of the gamification, but the difference, the distinction here is that this is a win-win. If you're really focusing on your health, using data to track, using data to measure and measure those vital signs and then map those to your lifestyle, this is a game you're going to win. There is no losing here, because this is the age of precision medicine, right? This is, every decision is with precision. So let's chuck out the guesswork in a game. This isn't a game of guessing anymore. This is a game where you get to be precise and decisive with what you choose to do next. Because I think that's where people fall apart. Like as you say, lots of people want to be, okay, look, I want to sleep better, I want to eat better, I want to move better. Where do I start? I just don't know where to start. And we can either look at it the hard way, as you said, there's so much in health that we can do, or we can look at it the easy way, which is start with one thing and just watch the ripple effect, because everything's connected. If you sleep well, you're going to have more energy. If you have more energy, you're going to be more focused. If you're more focused, you're going to be happier. If you're happier, you have a better relationship. If you have a better relationship, you're going to sleep better at night, and on it goes, right? So it's that connectivity, that synergy, which is actually even more exciting. You don't have to do everything. Do one thing and look at your data. Identify what is the one thing that's the big rock that's going to make the biggest difference.
I love it. That's after my heart. I've got a book coming out here at the end of the year, and that's a central tenet, is like we try too much, and because everything's so connected in the body, if you find that one thing that you do consistently, you'll change more than if you're trying to do 10 things to change 10 systems in the body. And it's like there's almost no way. That's a full-time job. There's almost no way you can live a life. And why are we doing all this? We're doing this so we can stay healthy for a purpose, which I really want to dive into, because I love your ideas around that. Let's stay on the testing stuff for a minute. When you're working with somebody, what does that look like? What are kind of the most important tests that are telling people things that maybe they're missing otherwise?
Yeah. So you probably gathered by now that I love to simplify things, because I think, we take that complexity of life and let's translate it into the simplicity of living is a central tenet of mine. So I have the big five. I think about the big five. What are those big five vital signs that we all need to capture? And to make it easy, it's A, B, C, D, E for me. So A is age. Now, this might seem like what do you mean age? I need to know my age, but I know how old I am. Of course I know how old I am. You don't know how old you are. You know how many candles there are on your cake, right? You know the number in your passport. That is not how old you are. I'm talking your biological age, your inner age, because that has got the biggest predictive value in terms of your lifespan and your health span. What are those healthy years ahead of you, and what is the lifespan ahead of you? And we are now, Derek, we're in this age of age reversal, which is what I do with all of my clients. I test your biological age, map your lifestyle to your age, and make the changes and watch it reverse. Which is exactly why my biological age is 30 years younger than my chronological age.
I love it. What is that? So what are people testing if they're looking at biological age? Is that a collection of markers?
No, it's one marker. So it's a simple blood test, which I send to your home, a finger prick test, and it's looking at your proteins and sugars. So your markers of inflammation, because if we go back to the core processes, those hallmarks of aging come from inflammation. Whatever's triggering inflammation in your body is triggering aging. And all of that accumulation of inflammation causes inflammaging. So you measure your levels in terms of your kind of immune system and all your inflammatory processes that are going on. And lots of research around this, which has shown this to be a very, very strong marker of aging.
What's your thought on the telomere testing as a marker of aging?
Yeah, so you'll find there are a number of biological clocks as such. Telomeres, the difficult thing with telomeres, and again, there's been some research which I can share with listeners later, but there's research that has put the different markers of biological aging head to head, and to see which are the ones that come out with that predictability, because that's what you want. You want to know what this is telling you about your future right now. And with telomeres, the difficulty with telomeres is that you can change your lifestyle, you can make changes, but you won't see the results effectively enough in your telomeres rapidly enough to know whether what you're changing is effective. So you could spend, 2 years doing the wrong thing that isn't helping with your age reversal, but you think it's the right thing because everyone's shouting about it on Instagram, or that's the latest fad, but you've got to know for you, which is why the testing that I do looks at glycans, so looks at your glycans, which are your proteins and your sugar molecules that attach to your proteins and then affect the function of the proteins in your cells, is that you can, within 3 to 4 months, you can say, right, I'm going to exercise differently, I'm going to sleep differently, I'm going to move differently, and check your biological age. Every 4 to 6 months is a good target, and it will reflect those changes very, very accurately. And that's the difference. I think that's the big distinction between all those other biological age tests that you can do and this particular one.
I love it. Yeah. Because we tell people, of course, you're not going to change it overnight, right? But we do want to know that it's changing. We do want to know that you're on the right path, at least whenever we recheck the scoreboard, as we say. And I do want to come back to like the interventions if some of these tests aren't quite what we want them to be. But I don't want to completely interrupt you. So that's A, is age, but biological age. How old are you inside? What's B?
Yeah, I forgot we were doing A, B, C, D. We could go in so many directions with this. Right, B is for breath, monitoring your breath. So important, because there's a massive connection between the way you breathe and the way you feel, the way you breathe and your nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, your stress nervous system, your peaceful nervous system, your parasympathetic. And you can change that through your breathing. But if you don't know how you're breathing, the rate, the depth, then you don't know what to change. We all think we know how to breathe. We're born breathing. We know how to breathe, but we don't know how functionally we breathe, how well we breathe. So A, B is breath, and that comes back to the data we can capture from our wellness rings is it's going to tell you about your breathing. So use it, use that information. C is circulation. A, B, age, breathing, circulation. So when I talk about circulation, 2 elements to that. Know your blood pressure. When's the last time you put your hand in a machine and know your blood pressure? Like the number of deaths that we have from heart disease and stroke, these are the top killers. If you don't know your blood pressure, that's elevating that risk for you. You've got to know. And then the key part of circulation, which most people aren't aware of, is heart rate variability. So not just your heart rate, not that pulse rate, how fast is your heart beating when you're on the treadmill or when you're at rest, but it's the pause in between the heartbeats that gives you even more information about your stress. So that's circulation. So age, breathing, circulation. D is your DNA, right? This is the time, isn't it? This is the genomic generation that we're living in, the genobiomic time that we're living in as well, which I absolutely love. So you've got to know how you're made. If fundamentally, we can now test your DNA to know exactly how you're made to function. And then you tap into that data. Why fight it, right? So know your DNA. And then the E is energy. So energy measurements are all about measuring your metabolism, your nutrients, understanding where that energy from you is coming from, because ultimately we are energy. That's what we are, right?
Just so everybody kind of understands, whenever we're looking at heart rate variability, can you explain that a little bit? What is that showing? Because I know a lot of people are starting to get that number and get that data from their wearables. What should they be looking for? What does that number mean when it's, not in a good range?
Yeah, so think of it as a stress marker. So in terms of your heart rate variability, and it's thinking about what your variability is. So this is not necessarily comparing yourself to other people and other norms, but know what your benchmark is, because your heart rate is designed to vary and modulate. And when it doesn't do that, it's telling you that you're under stress. So use those numbers to say, I need a bit of recovery now. And that might be just 2 minutes of stepping outside into the sunshine, or it might be actually, taking a day off from going to the gym. So use that data to understand that those stress levels are impacting you and actually telling you that you need to have recovery time. Because we're now living in this time, aren't we, where it's constantly go, go, go. It's 24/7. We don't sleep. We don't get our 7 to 8 hours because there's Netflix and the social media or that next email to send. And actually, we're designed to oscillate. We need to have recovery time.
I have a couple other questions on screening, but let's go back to some of these tests. And if you're working with someone and you start getting some of these tests back, so we start looking at their biological age, and it's not what they want. It's the opposite of you. And we see a lot of these. The person who's 50 and it's like, they're struggling to keep up with what you would think is their current biological age. What is the starting point to start reversing the biological age for people? What are the interventions? What is the stuff they can do at home? What's that next step that actually starts to change the momentum of that?
So this is where the personalization needs to come in, because that next step is going to be different for everybody. So I've devised this little system, which I call the LQ test. So just like you have your IQ to know how cognitively intelligent you are, and your EQ to know how emotionally intelligent you are, your LQ is your lifestyle quotient. So how smart are you? How intelligent are you about your lifestyle, the way you style your life? So it's 10 questions, 10 areas, 20 questions, really simple, all research based on those areas in your lifestyle that plug directly into your longevity. And once you've got that score, you'll know which is the area you need to start in. So for example, if we look at food, now it may be that you're not eating food that meets your needs, or you don't know how to meet your nutritional needs, or you don't make wise food choices. What we know from some of the age reversing data is what you eat is important, but when you eat is critical. So that's what we might zone in on you. If that came up as one of your kind of big scores, is like, right, let's talk about when to eat. Let's talk about the longevity genes that are activated and deactivated when you actually start to narrow your eating window. So that's one key area. And I find that works so effectively for so many of my clients, is getting them to a place of eating to that 12-hour, 10-hour, 8-hour window. And you see the numbers change. But it might not be your driver, right? Back to what is it for you? So there's other layers, what you eat as well. So most of my clients, and you'll see me wearing a sugar sensor on my arm. It's not because I have diabetes, but it's because, again, back to that data, once you know what your sugar levels are doing, the highs, the lows, how you keep them in an ebb and flow, what that potato does for you compared to what it does for your partner, you make personal choices about your food. You avoid those hypos that give you the headaches in the morning when you get them in the middle of the night, because you've got information that tells you the reason you're tired when you wake up is not because you didn't have enough sleep or because of anything else. It's because you had a hypo in the night. So you address that, not the other stuff. Yeah. So back to precision decisions.
How often is that area something that people didn't expect it to be?
Oh, yeah. All the time, right? All the time. Because these are the lesser known things. People aren't looking out for this stuff. And so I have so many penny drop moments with my clients, because, as we said earlier, it always seems to come together.
Yeah, because I could imagine, you go through these things, and hopefully we can get people access to, some of the questions on there, and give them some ways to go through some of that so they can find some of this out. But, I can imagine meeting people who are like, look, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm trying to eat healthier and I'm trying to exercise. And then you start looking and you're like, that's fine. Your real problem is that you're not sleeping well and you're not managing stress well. I'm making those up, but it's like, I know you're focusing on this. We can, but let's put that down for a minute. Here's going to be the massive change for you if we start to get you recovering. So we've got, everything that comes along with good sleep. That would take forever for me to go through all that, and let's figure out a way to manage stress so that your body's not in this constant, sympathetic overload and fight or flight all the time. And then we can come back and layer these other things in. So I could see where people are almost focusing on the wrong things a lot of times if they're not getting the results they want.
But we do that because it's easier to fine tune something you're already really good at. So I'm eating well, but what do I need in for my magnesium? Where do I get my selenium? Where am I going to get my zinc? Instead of like, actually the sleep is calling out for me, but I'd much rather tune in on the small things. Don't do that, right? Focus on the big stuff, because the small stuff, you'll get that anyway. It's the big stuff, which is why that LQ test helps you to dissociate from what you want to fine tune and what really needs your attention.
That's so good. We talk about it a lot with patients who are starting to like talk about, different health optimization strategies and certain supplements and stuff. And look, I would love to get into that. I'm a believer in those things, but I'm like, if you're not exercising and eating well, you're jumping over the Grand Canyon of interventions to try and do these little things that we know change it to a degree, but they change it to a much smaller degree. That's the fine tuning stuff. You need the giant intervention to be checked before we start trying to fine tune things.
Yeah, totally.
So in terms of, I'd love to get your input on like, the continuous glucose monitors. What are people looking for whenever they're doing that? How does that inform what they maybe should eat as they are going forward? And then what other things can we be doing as like a screening tool that's consistently giving us those scores? But let's stay on like the continuous glucose monitors for a minute.
Yeah. So the interesting thing that I found with the glucose monitoring is the first time you put one on, you're learning. It's almost that intrigue of what does happen if I eat this? What happens if I eat this at this time? What happens if he eats this and I eat this, to both of us, if you're doing it as a family? So use those initial few weeks just for intrigue and curiosity and finding out. And what happens is that the moment you know that something is being monitored, your behavior changes, right? It just does. It automatically does. It's the Hawthorne effect. I'm sure you've come across the Hawthorne effect, right? There was a study that was done here in the UK at Newcastle University, and they were having a lot of bike thefts in their university at that time. And what they did is they put up posters in 3 areas where most of the bike thefts were going on. And the poster was simply a pair of eyes looking outwards and the sign that said "You are being watched." And in those 3 areas, bike thefts plummeted. They just dropped. Nothing. There was no other intervention. There were no police. There was nothing. It was just a poster. Because when you're being watched, you change what you do. And so what's happening with our senses and with our rings? We're watching ourselves, right? You're getting an eye inside of you. And that's exciting. You don't need someone else to watch you and hold you accountable. Like, you've got your data and your numbers and your devices to give you that nudge. So I think that's the really, really important thing that happens when you put on a glucose monitor, is that you've got your own eyes now. And so you're automatically making very, very different food choices. So I find people are just much more interested in where are the hidden sugars. The food labeling is so confusing as well. You don't really know what's happening. So eat the stuff and see what happens. You need to know. And I find that that's the kind of biggest intervention, is when you see the highs and the lows. And when you've got a target as well. So this is different to a target if you have diabetes. The target is more narrow. But no one wants to go above target. We don't want to do that. We don't like to see that. So you change.
Yeah, let's tie this together with kind of what you were talking about of testing the biological age. So when we do have a spike in glucose, not once, but if we're doing it consistently, what are the dangers of that? What's happening when that actually happens inside of our body?
So from an aging perspective, there's a sort of direct activation of some of our longevity genes, and it affects your mitochondrial function as well. So that's what's happening from an aging perspective. We've also got the other perspective of the disease triggers as well. So when you've constantly got high levels of sugar in your body, what's happening to your pancreas and your insulin is that you've got high levels of insulin being constantly stimulated. And of course, you're then going to get any excess glucose you're not using is then settling down as fat, and it will settle around your organs and affect all those functions as well. And then, of course, that results in years down the line, because it's not immediate, but you don't see it, it all layers up, is the diabetes arrives and the heart disease arrives, and the stroke arrives. So this is all kind of that prevention of those diseases. But ultimately, if you prevent aging, you prevent those diseases, because most diseases that we have are diseases of aging. If you change that underlying process of inflammation and that constant stressor on the body, then you're reversing aging.
So we probably answered this question a little bit, because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was, when we're going through this and people are learning kind of, what foods do spike their, glucose levels intrinsically, should we do a deeper dive on the food that we're putting in our bodies, such as like food sensitivity tests or like nutrient testing? What's your thoughts on some of those things? What's your guidance to people on that?
Yeah, so this comes under my E in terms of those kind of energy tests, is absolutely testing the sort of your metabolic status and your nutrients as well. Because again, we go through guesswork. How many people, I mean, the supplement industry is booming. And it's booming for the wrong reasons, because people are just taking things through guesswork. But test, find out what you need, really be precise about what you need. There's a lot of money that you're spending on things, and you've got to know that they're effective. So you've got to be able to track, if I take this, is it having the desired effect? Is it something that's missing? Not the sort of normal ranges that your GP tests. So they might have your B12 test and it's like, oh, it's fine, it's normal. You are here to be optimized. You're not here to be normal, right? We're talking about elevating your health so that you're really able to perform and function at your absolute peak and be who you want to be. So take that normal range and really expand it so that you're giving yourself every chance to be able to function as you need to.
Yeah. What are practitioners, and look, we talk, so I have a pain specialty practice where we're really taking the pain that people have ended up with and let's start treating that and get that better. And we always take that opportunity, because pain is a very good motivator, to spin off into some of these things. Is that, yeah, look, you've developed this problem because of some movement issues, probably some systemic inflammation that was taking over your immune system. So your immune system didn't have the energy to handle these things. We don't want you to end up back here. So here's the next steps. And so, we kind of use the motivation and the kind of presence of pain so that we can catapult into some of these deeper changes for people. What are practitioners missing whenever they're working with patients who are having these major health issues or pain problems?
The issue that they're missing is the motivation, the burning desire. Because unless you've got a reason to do something different, a strong enough reason, you'll tolerate life as it is. You'll find this with your pain patients. Some of them will, yeah, it's painful, but I don't have a strong enough desire. It's not a bad enough pain. So the thing that we miss in our patients, I think, is understanding the motivation and the drive to change. I spent years in my career telling my patients, you've got to go and exercise for 150 minutes every week, because Public Health England say that's the best thing to do for your health. And I'd just expect them to trot out of my consulting room and go and do that. Nobody does. And the reason was I didn't ask them that fundamental question, which is, what's important to you? What matters to you? So until you know that, that's why, people lose weight and regain it. They go to the gym and then stop going, because you've got to have a strong enough reason. You've got to tap into those core human drivers. For you, you've discovered that through pain. It's, the pain is painful enough as the motivators. I don't want that again. I'm not going there again. But what is it that's pushing you? Yeah,
it's so good, especially if we're trying to really change what our activities have been, right? If our health skill has been very low up to this point, and we're trying to, create some new habits that would renovate that whole, health skill, body function, everything around, how we live. We're probably going to have to change a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis. We were talking about the one thing. So if we've identified that, like, my purpose is, I want to be there for my family. I love having my family around. I want to be there for my kids, my grandkids. I want to share time with them and lift up the family and be with them as much as possible. So we've identified that purpose. How does that then get taken into action? What's some of the one things that you have found to be incredibly effective for your patients?
So interestingly, just having that purpose, identifying a purpose, adds 7.5 years to your life. Research has got that. I know. So just knowing that. So before you get out of bed, what is the purpose of my day today? The purpose of my day today is, and you're already doing longevity work on yourself. And so sometimes it is as simple as that. Again, back to simplification. I like to think about 1-minute moves because life is busy. And people don't have time to do 4 hours or 3 hours or 2 hours. 1 minute, 60 seconds. And okay, I'm going to slow down my breathing for 60 seconds when I turn my computer on. So you chainmail a habit onto something you're already doing, right? Make life easy for yourself, please. When I sit down at my computer, I will take 6 deep breaths. Done. You've slowed it down. You've got what you need. You've reset. And you're reducing your stress, which is at the core of longevity. Right? I will balance on one leg, just like I'm doing right now, even though you can't tell, when I'm on my next Zoom call. Great. Because we know that if you can balance for more than 10 seconds on one leg, you're twice as likely to be alive in 10 years' time than if you can't. Back to what the research is telling us. So it's those sorts of simple modifications that you can just start to impregnate, create the habits around them, because once you start using willpower, things start to drop off. So add what you're doing to something you're already doing, right? Then think about when you eat, how you eat. Exercise is a really interesting one. We haven't touched on this too much, but there's a little bit of a Goldilocks story to exercise when it comes to aging and longevity. It's not too much, not too little, and just the right amount, because our body needs a certain amount of stress. So not just the feeling of stress, but a stressor in the body, the sense that there's something that is needed. I need to activate my survival instincts and mechanisms here. So you put your body under stress when you exercise it, but you do that too much and then you end up at a disadvantage because you over-inflame. So back to the data. Use your data to know when to exercise, when to recover. Test your biological age to know, listen, all those HIIT classes that I'm going to, actually, is it too much? I don't need this. So that's important as well. I think, fundamentally, yes, it's the stuff. It's moving, it's eating, it's sleeping, it's connecting as well. Let's not forget about our biological imperative to be a connected species. And that's important as well, again, in terms of aging and age reversal, been proven that the more connected you are in terms of that sense of belonging, the longer your lifespan as well.
Are you familiar with the exercise like back casting? Have you heard of that?
I have not. Tell me.
So we'll take people through this. So back casting is kind of, the opposite of forecasting. So, we go into the future and when we're dealing with aging, it's something that we do a lot because it makes people identify things they might not have thought of. And it's like, how old, if you want to achieve all of these goals and be with your family and be active, let's say 90. A lot of my patients pick that number for some reason. Why not 100? I don't know. They want to be healthy and active at 90. And we're like, okay, so let's go to your 90-year-old self and look backwards and backcast and look at the activities that you were doing that got you to that point healthily. Yeah. And so they identify like, what habits am I not doing? And one of the biggest ones that people say is like more relaxation, more downtime, more time with my family. I know, like they intrinsically know that burning the candle at both ends and running at such a high RPM is not going to help them accomplish that goal. And like you said, that awareness is very powerful. But then we flip it over and say, you did not make it to 90. What did you do that made you fail? What were the things that you missed? And that comes up. People say, oh, well, heart disease. Okay, well, let's look at the things that we could prevent heart disease with. Cancer. My mom died of cancer. Okay, well, what things can we do to alter your cancer risk profile? An accident. Okay, well, let's not do so many dumb things anymore. No, but it's things that they might not have thought about trying to prevent from happening, that gives them this new light. But it's such an interesting and eye-opening exercise for people, because a lot of them say, like, yeah, I'm accomplishing, my financial goals right now, or my, activity goals. But if I keep going on this path, I'm not going to accomplish my main goal, my main purpose in life. So whenever I was listening to your TED Talk, I thought, that's not something you hear a lot of health practitioners talk about. That's not something that many doctors bring up with patients, is like, what is your purpose? What is your why? Why are we doing all this stuff? And how powerful of an experience is that for somebody to meditate on and think about that.
But there's two bits to that, I think, as well. There's the sense that you want to leave a legacy, because that's important. Your imprint in the world matters. But I also say, live a legacy. Live it now, right now, so that what you leave is what you live. Excuse me. And I think that's so important for everybody, because you set your goals, but you forget who you are on that journey as well. Can I pause and go and get it?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Are we 2 minutes? Apologies, Derek. It's the excitement of the conversation. So, And then this idea of, I want to get to 90. And you said, well, why not 100? Well, my vision is that every human has the potential to live a 1 million hour life. I think you're trying to do the maths, aren't you?
I am. I just finished reading a book called 4,000 Weeks, and I'm like, okay, how many hours in a week?
1 million hours is 116 years. And that time is here now. This isn't just, no, it's not possible. There's already people on this planet who have lived that long. So we know that in terms of human potential, it's possible. So it's possible for you. But what we want is for those years to be healthy years. Right? And at the moment, people's image of getting older, which is why your clients are saying, oh yeah, just 90 and not 100 or beyond, is because their image of getting older and aging is one of frailty and memory loss and disease. But what if being 116 meant those were healthy, active years? And they are, and they can be.
Yeah, it's conversations I have with my family. People say, but, and this is all comes back to belief, right? I don't want to live that long. I hear that all the time. I don't want to live that long. You're telling me that you don't want to have more time to have great experiences and make great memories, seeing the world, being with your family, helping other people, whatever your purpose is, right? Yeah. So you're saying that you don't want that. I don't believe it. I think there's a limiting belief in there that you think you can't have that as you age. Yeah. When we're talking about that, and I've heard you talk about this in other areas, like the power of belief and the power of the brain on aging, on health, on healing. Let's dive into that a little bit. Like, how do we look at that? How do we start to change that for people?
I think that's a hard conversation, isn't it? Because beliefs are so intrinsic to our actions. And again, when you look at the sort of areas in the brain, when you look at something like affirmations, which have become very popularized recently, haven't they? Make those daily affirmations about the person you are, and you will become that person. I am energetic, I am healthy, I am happy. But it sounds very ethereal. But when you look at the brain, another bit of research that was done where they took a group of people, 2 groups of people are about to go in to see their doctor to get some health advice on exercise. One group made those affirmations, I'm healthy, I'm energetic, and all those affirmations about their positivity, about their health. Another group didn't. Which group do you think went on and made changes in their exercise? The group who made the affirmations. Because that belief that I can, you're lighting up those reward centers, you're lighting up the centers in your brain that are very, very closely correlated to activity and action. And when you're not making those affirmations, you're not lighting those areas up. So this isn't just something to say, you are rewiring and activating the right parts of your brain that connect to that. So I think, bringing the science into these conversations is so useful, because a lot of these practices they're from the East. They're 4,000 or 5,000 years old. Breathing slower, yoga practices, for example, meditation, silence, stillness, slowing down. This is nothing new, but let's add the science to it and it becomes exciting. Why do we say do nothing? Why do we say slow down? Why do we say switch off? Because there's a part of your brain, the default mode network, that you can only access when you do nothing. When you go for your shower, when you go for a walk, when your mind is empty, that's your creativity center activated. Yeah.
It's so good. I had a great conversation on resilience on the podcast with a good friend of mine, Stacy Copa, and she said, "Give your brain the time to be bored. We're all so wrapped up." This one hurt me. I'm like, oh man, like for me to sit and not have an audiobook or read or write or listen to a podcast is difficult. But she was like, give your brain that time to be bored so that you can tap into those things. And you're actually accomplishing more in terms of like resilience, and getting that brain in a position where it can take the inputs coming after than you are if you keep just letting the inputs bombard you. I was like, note taken. When somebody is dealing with some of these kind of limiting beliefs, is there things that you've seen that were really effective when you're working with patients that actually changed it? In this conversation, I'm going to call her out, Andrea Hines. Listen to this next part.
Okay. So what do I focus on? So there is this moment, isn't there, where we all have choice. You have a belief or a thought or a feeling, and there's a moment when you react to it. What's your reaction point? And it's in that moment that you make your decision. Is this helpful to me or is this harmful to me? And it's as simple as that. Is me believing I'm not good enough, I'll never lose weight, my joints will never stop hurting, I'm going to get cancer? Is that belief helping you or harming you? Is that belief helpful or unhelpful? Does it take you to be the person you want to be? And what is that person? Back to your values. Who is that person you identify as? I'm kind, I'm caring, I'm attentive, I'm courageous, I'm adventurous, I'm funny, I'm organized. Is that belief helping you be that or not? And then you change it. You can't change your thoughts. They're going to arrive all the time, constantly, right? Constantly. They're like the sky and the clouds. The clouds come and go. The thoughts will come and go. You've just got to sit with them. Let them be. Don't fight them. I think we've spent a lot of our time trying to distract ourselves from the thoughts that we don't want, and that becomes the worst enemy. But then neutralize them. This is not helping me. What do I want to be instead? Yes, I'm adventurous. Right, what am I going to do? Yes, I'm going to go and enroll on that photography class and try something I've never tried before.
That's good. Just creating the awareness to catch those thoughts, because how often do we have the thought and then we just accept it without even kind of questioning where that came from and what that's going to create from an activity standpoint. And then we're responding as if we chose to accept that thought, even if that's not something we wanted, because it's not serving us. Very, very powerful. There's so many applications for that, whether it's like you said, this is going to hurt. I won't be healthy. I shouldn't exercise. I don't like exercise. Well, those thoughts infiltrate deep into your neurology, deep into your biology. If you don't question them and start to create some alternatives, do you tell people to kind of, hey, if there's repeated ones, write them down, and then let's work on, what's the reverse, what's the rewiring thought? Like, do you journal on this stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of do a what's on your t-shirt kind of exercise. Like if you're walking around with a t-shirt that says, I'm not good enough, what's the impact of that? Hey, everyone, I'm not good enough. And you're walking down the street. Who do you affect? Who's affected by that? You're affected. Who else is affected? What's the impact? What do you want your t-shirt to say? Right? Because if your t-shirt says, I'm not good enough, you're not going to that party. You're not going to go and hang out with your friends. You're going to be sitting in the back of the class. You're not going to try something new because you don't feel good enough. But what else does your t-shirt say? Because you want to do other things. You don't want life to be narrow. You want it to be expansive. So we work on changing that t-shirt slogan. What's the better believe? Because the brilliant thing is, again, who's got control over your brain? You have. Just ask it for a better thought. That's all you need to do. Don't like that one. Can you send me a better thought, please? It's going to come.
It's so good. We tell people like your brain is just it's Google. If you ask it a question, it's going to find an answer. Yeah. So ask it better questions.
Yeah.
How can I feel better? How can I present better in this environment, in this world, in this conversation, in this interaction? Your brain's going to be like, okay, well, I'll find a few answers for you and I'll give them to you.
Yeah. Well, you remember like the reticular activating system. It's not just it's actually a system in your brain that's designed to find what you're looking for. So if I'm having such a bad day, your brain's job is to find you all the information to confirm that. That's all it's doing. That's what you're trying to do. You're a scanning machine, constantly scanning your environment. Give me the information to reinforce what I'm thinking, and it will find it for you. But if you want to find the information that says, what am I grateful for today? You'll notice that instead.
So good. I have a couple questions. Let's shift gears on like toxicity levels, because I've heard you talk about that. Let's kind of dive into some of the things that people might find if we're doing some toxicity testing. What would that look like? And what are some of those hidden ones that really could negatively affect our health and aging?
Yeah, so that's interesting as well. So again, I do some toxicity testing, very specifically and focused. And again, a simple finger prick test comes to your home, you take the test, off it goes to the lab where it does all the magic. And the two key ones that I've picked up quite a lot of are, interestingly, are mercury. So we're looking at where is that coming from? And of course, we know that food sources, fish in particular, is quite a common source for that. And again, people don't realize that. They think they're eating well because they're eating fish. But actually for you, that might be the source of your headache, your gut problems, your mood issues. And arsenic has been coming up quite a lot recently, which is like the scary one. Like, what do you mean I've got arsenic in my blood? And where's that coming from? Because if that's high, it's going to affect your mental clarity, and again, back to sort of gut issues and circulation issues as well. So where's that coming from? Well, your water, potentially, and also back to our conversation about supplements. I've met people who are taking 20, 30, 40 supplements. What are those incipient ingredients in those? And a lot of these are these toxic metals.
Yeah, I did a test, and mine came back with arsenic, and that was my question. Was like, am I being poisoned? What's happening here? And then starting to dive in. Well, and that's a good question. So for me, I went on kind of a deep dive. How do you kind of detoxify? How can somebody, if somebody sees that, what is the process they can go through? What should they take? What activities should they do if they're trying and detoxify from some of these things?
Yeah, again, that probably needs to be more individualized with kind of different tests as well, relating to liver function and kidney function as well. But you do want to identify a source if you can. And so you can test your water for arsenic. You can get your water companies to test that for you as well. You can look at those supplements, and you really need to think about elimination here. So that whole kind of detoxification and elimination, but also thinking about what am I putting into my body? So hydrate. Fill yourself up with coloured vegetables. Get all of those nutrients that you need in. Check your gut microbiome as well. I think there's a real connection as well between how healthy your gut microbes are and what they're doing for you as well. So it's layered. I think there isn't a simple answer to like, here's the detox protocol for arsenic poisoning, right?
Let's dive into wearables for a moment and kind of talk about some of the fun stuff that's starting to come out. What are the ones that you like people to start using if they're going to start going down this health tracking, health testing, path?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, start simple, start small, start with stuff that is easily accessible. And, I'm wearing mine at the moment, kind of my wearable ring, the wellness data ring, which is going to give you a wealth of information, and the sugar sensor that we've already talked about. Those are two really, really fundamental starting points. We're back to, the fine tuning stuff and the big rocks. So certainly I think these are the kind of big rocks to do. Lots of people have got watches as well. So let's start monitoring that. But I think, I think that sugar sensors, the continuous glucose monitors, are going to be the thing that is going to revolutionize health going forward. So many more people are going to be wearing those. They're going to be what pedometers did to step counts 20 years ago, right? This is the thing now.
Yeah, the big, I know we talked about it a little bit. I've had couples who did it that we start finding out that, like one in particular, it was the opposite of what we thought. So the husband was very, very sensitive to, let's say, rice, potatoes, had huge spikes with it. Now, he was in incredible shape. If you looked at them, you would have thought the opposite. And she had very little spikes whenever she would eat those things. So when they would cook, he was like, we've started to switch who's getting, the bulk of the carbohydrate part of this, because for me, I'm not getting the spike. Now, there was an interesting thing because he worked out a lot. And so I was like, I think one of the reasons at your age that you have the muscle mass that you have is because you are getting these spikes. And if you're doing that with the activity, your body is actually kind of using that kind of anabolic process that's coming along with the, some of the growth processes of getting, a spike in glucose or something. But he's the rare exception that they're actually putting those hormones to use in terms of health and growth. But it was a very interesting thing that we can still cook together, we can still eat together, but which parts of the meals we have might need to change if we're doing it as a couple.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely the interesting thing is that's why we have all these diet wars about, go keto, go carnivore, go plant-based, go this. The problem is that you're not individualizing it. And so we're never going to win those sorts of wars until you actually have personalized data, so that your DNA data that tells you what your tolerance is like, measuring the kind of sugar effect as well, looking at those individual nutrients, your B12s, your vitamins, your minerals as well, and really personalizing it. I think it's absolutely key. We're missing a trick if we don't do that. You cannot have a population level diet that is right for everybody.
Yeah, it's so good. It's like, just because it worked for you doesn't mean, that's wonderful that you've identified that, but it doesn't mean that it's going to work for the person next door or the person across the street. And they need to do the same testing, and they need to do the same experimentation on themselves and have the same fun of playing detective of what works, what doesn't work. I love the approach. I love the way that you think about health, because it is, a lot. And I know sometimes people get a little frustrated. We love the secret, right? We love this is the diet I've discovered. This is the supplement that's going to change everything. But that's not what's really going to change the future of health. It's getting what is the one for you? What is the activity level for you? What is the recovery for you specifically that's going to change your life? Yeah. And if we do that 300, 400 million times, then as a whole, we're healthier. Our society, aging is better, pain is better. And on that, I'd like to kind of wrap up with this. If we're doing these things right, and you talked about the 1,000,000 hours, what should or could the future look like if we, as a healthcare system and as a society, taking control of our health, taking our health back, and growing the skill of health? What could the future look like in terms of health and wellness and aging?
Oh, the future will look bright, but it's not what it could look like. We're there already. That whole quantified self, that whole sense of I'm holding my own health in my own hands. The waiting times to see a doctor are already crazy. Those are going to be reduced if we find that we take health back into our own hands. Let's start segregating healthcare and sick care. That's what the future's going to look like. Sick care, doctor surgery, hospitals, surgeons, great. Healthcare, that's you. That's you with data, with making the right decisions, because this is the thing that I truly believe. And I think this is when you said, where's your protocol for health? You know, where's that one thing that's going to be right for all? Well, I've got this little code, which is the health activation code, where I truly believe that data drives determination. Determination drives decisions, and decisions drive destiny. So if you break that down, you've got to know your data. You've got to know what drives you. And then you've got to make lifestyle decisions based on your data and your drivers. And you're going to win. Win that game of health, right?
Can you say that again? Data drives decisions.
Data drives decisions. No. Nah.
Sorry, I messed you up.
You did. Data drives determination. Determination drives decisions. Decisions drive destiny.
Dr. Patel, I can't think of a better way to end it. We're gonna wrap it with that one. Thank you so much. This has been incredible. Normally we ask our guests if you could tell people one single thing that they could do today to improve their health, what would that be?
Take responsibility. 100% responsibility.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do. Where can people find your TED Talk? Where can people find all the information? Where can they follow you? I know people are going to want to dive into some of this stuff, and we'll throw links in the show notes for everybody. But
yeah, perfect. No, look, head over to my website, dralkapatel.com. On there, you'll see that there'll be a pop-up for this LQ test that I've talked about. So really identify your starting point. You can do it from there. There's also a link on there to send me a message. You can send me a video. You can send me a message. You can send me an audio. I will 100% reply to you within a couple of days at most. Send me your biggest challenge and I'll give you my biggest tip.
I love it, Doc. Thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep spreading the positive, and hopefully maybe next year we can have a little quick round 2 in person whenever we're in London.
Amazing. Yeah, would love that, Derek. Amazing. Thank you. It's been a great conversation. You're a brilliant host. Love it.
Thank you so much, Doc.